Jigar Mistry of Buoyant Capital is also joining us on the show this afternoon. Jigar, good afternoon to you. Let's talk about, what is it that you're liking at this point in time? A lot of anticipation pre-budget as to what it would do for spaces like infrastructure, cement, metals, because they're all feeders into infrastructure, whether something big would come about for real estate. All of those hopes got dashed. But obviously there is scope outside the budget to do things for each of these industries, which we're seeing being taken on bit by bit. Do you feel that you could probably look at increasing allocations to some of these sectors in a portfolio?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for inviting me again. I think the budget was the dash of hope only for the select few, the top 5 lakh families in India. But if you go beyond this, I think I came 2 or 3 days on your show just before the budget, and we did end up discussing that there is absolutely no fiscal room for them to maneuver much around, right? So they did what they could have done, although I would have expected they would get done with the LTCG, but because that's absolutely a no-cost measure for them. But after what the FM did, I think what the RBI did yesterday was sort of budget, part 2.0, because they essentially allowed a lot of liquidity to flow into the system. Now, your system-wide liquidity stands at 3 lakh crores, but a lot of real estate projects, I think CRISIL came out with a report which said that although the reported GNPA is 3.3% in the housing loans, but most of those are in moratorium,
yes.
Right?
So it's actually almost 10%.
Closer to 10%. Now you're not forced to recognize that for a good part of the next 3 or 4 or 6 months, which means that 1, it gives some bit of leeway. 2, reducing the CR, or rather allowing auto loans, consumer loans, and not providing CRR on that actually increases the spreads by 10 basis points at the NIM level. At the spread level, a good 15-20 basis points. So you have effectively lowered interest rate without explicitly doing so. So RBI is getting a lot more creative now, with the LTRO now, and it seems like a quantitative easing of sorts in India. Where we go from here is that one thing we discussed the last time around was that every time the corporate spreads in India sort of shrink, the market's broad base. So if you look at 2018-19, the downgrade to upgrade ratio was as much as 2:1. In April, it's come down to 1.2:1. Mr. Das was on record saying that the transmission is happening to quite a great extent. But now the spreads are actually reducing even faster. And whenever that happens, in 2018 and 19, the markets, 5 companies drove the entire Nifty. Now we are probably looking at a much, much wider participation. So I think that is the place to be in. Some can sort of loosely translate it into mid and small caps performing better. But I think the participation in the markets will get a lot wider. And I think investors should position for that.
Okay. So would you... Okay, let's work with some of the developments that have happened, and this move for NBFCs in some fashion. Is it conducive enough for people to go out and make a slightly longer term investment bet into any of these companies which will benefit from the policy moves yesterday?
Not explicitly so, because just the move yesterday is essentially one where it doesn't create demand. It reduces the cost, but it's not like NBFCs will go and say, okay, let me lend more on housing finance now. So
give them some relief though.
Some amount of relief has happened, but I think there is already a case for some NBFCs. See, there is a legitimate place for NBFCs to coexist along with banks, because they provide the last mile connectivity, so to speak, which many banks cannot do. Now within that, what most NBFCs ended up doing was borrowing at a shorter tenor and lending at a longer tenor. So asset liability durations were mismatched beyond connection. And assuming there was no liquidity crisis, they would have assumed that we'll continue to refinance this in a way that we'll start making huge amounts of spreads. Now after September 2018, they realized that money is not flowing as easily as it would, and therefore some of them raised bonds, some of them compressed their NIMs, and to a large extent the froth in the system has settled down. Correct. So at the peak of the crisis, there were 2 businesses that we bought. One was Canfin Homes, one was Bajaj Finance. We got Bajaj Finance under 2,000 rupees. Canfin Homes was something like 240, 250. Both stocks have performed exceedingly well. I think PNB Housing, after the recent numbers, has tanked a lot. That is one business that sort of looks interesting. Probably and arguably we are at the end of their downgrade cycle. So once things improve at a little over 1 time, it does make sense to get into a few select NBFC.
You're buying
names.
a valuation. You're not necessarily buying growth in business as
Growth in business
PNB.
is there.
For
right?
PNB Housing.
Yeah.
Okay, but the asset quality issues don't worry you too much.
Increasingly at this valuation, it doesn't. Right. So obviously, if you are going to wait for the picture to clear out entirely, then you are going to have to pay 10 times like a Bajaj Finance, right? So essentially, here you can get a few names. I think that is very similar to when we got into ICICI Bank as well. So banking as an exposure is very important to us. Asset quality is far more important there because of the size at which they operate and the penetration that they get, right? Mortgage at the end of the day, based on the economics of finance in India, you know that loan to value is fairly large, correct? So the actual loss on an actual mortgage is not going to be that high. Compare that to a microfinance or retail financing of a bank, it becomes a much bigger issue there, correct? So there, I think credit cycle plays a big part. And to that extent, I think ICICI Bank under the new leadership still looks phenomenally good. So banking sector is one that is very interesting. To answer your first question, yeah, there was not a huge relief on real estate or building materials. But essentially, if you look at cement demand in India, it's been stagnant for almost 7-8 years. And there's some companies that have managed to consolidate, some companies that have managed to grow to a size above 15 odd million tons, which makes them a reasonably good player, a good force in the industry. Now, as and when housing picks up, affordable housing picks up, there are few of those companies that are available at fairly decent valuation. So among those that are trading, we own Ambuja Cement, we own Birla Corp, we have for quite a while. So those are the two names that I like. Within the infrastructure space, I think we are still better off owning asset creators rather than asset owners. Right, so asset owning space, they have tried with multiple models and they have not yet found a formula that sticks. So they started with EPC, then they went to BOT, then they went to HAM. Now I think we are back to BOT/EPC. So I think that is one model that needs a resolution, and asset owners, whatever the cost that has come down, still doesn't appeal that much to us. So within our portfolio, in this space, we have employed a barbell strategy, which is you own a L&T and then you own a company like NCC, right? L&T has not performed for quite a while. The order inflow target has been kept fairly robust. NCC, on the other hand, is one company that for no fault of theirs, because the government changed in Andhra Pradesh, you essentially cancelled all the contracts, and now it's trading at a valuation where if they execute the current orders at hand, you're getting the company equivalent to the working capital in the company. So yeah, maybe nothing gets resolved for the next 3 months, 6 months, but what is there to lose? So if you are happy waiting it out for a full year or so, I think that is a very interesting business to own.
Okay. Well, just before we continue further, let's hear out one more voice. Companies with good management have 90% chances of giving good returns, and everything else makes up for the remainder. This is as per Ramdev Agrawal, the chairman of Motilal Oswal AMC, who believes that the market formulas also need to evolve with changing dynamics, but an effective, well-driven management does far more good than any other factor.
So, but destruction happens because of the bad managements. Because in businesses, 90% is management, 10% is, as it is said, everything else. So if you don't get your management right, one, you don't make a lot of money. A lot of money will be made by big management. And people come here to make a lot of money. One is that. Second is that you don't buy quality. When you talk about long-term compounding, the compounding can happen only by quality. I mean, if there is no quality, it will falter. And if it will falter, it will not work out in the long run in compounding. In compounding, what is most important is, it is not a 5-year game, 10-year game, it has to be 20, 30 years game. You might stay 10 years, but the person who is buying from you at a fancy price, he is looking at another 10 years. And that guy is Exit is again dependent on the next 10 years. So whether you want to stay 10 years or not, but the longevity of the company is extremely important in current valuation. So getting the management right, getting the quality of the company right. So all this QGLP, all 4 components, all of them are very important. Like when I met Buffett, when I heard about Buffett in 95, first I thought quality is very important. So I became bhakt of quality. Without bothering of quality at any price. That was the game to start with in 95. Then in 2003, I read this book, Intelligent Investor, which was lying in the rack. I thought this old man, what new things he would have. Our Buffett knows everything. So I didn't bother about that book. So when I read in 2003, margin of safety, when the market collapsed in 2000, then we learned margin of safety. So quality also you cannot buy at any price. So then QNP came. Okay, then we were practicing QNP. Growth was in any case part of the DNA. Then in 2014, we realized that G is equal to R. Growth and return is one and the same mathematically. If the company grows at 45%, so in 2014 we did a number, but in 2014 and 14, Infosys grew at 43%, and the stock returned 43%. Colgate grew at 11% and it gave 11%. So we realized that G is extremely important. And quality is important, G is important, but then you want to make a lot of money in compounded way. So longevity is also important. Sure. So quality and longevity is important in quality, longevity is important in growth. So like that, you're learning. Now, having written QGLP in 14, again, we missed out on the quality of management because we thought it is not numerical and it's very qualitative. How do you figure out? Then we had 2 accidents. Yeah. Then we said, let's write it. So this time we wrote this quality of management also. So like you are plugging. Again, we'll commit some mistake in next 1 or 2 years. Then again, we'll find some other method.
Right, words of wisdom from Ramdev Agarwal. You don't want to miss that. You can watch the entire interview on our website, www.bloombergpin.com. You can read more also into that. So shifting focus back to markets, TD Power System is locked in upper circuit with gains of 20%. I think they posted their numbers yesterday. They posted a profit versus the loss figure in the corresponding quarter. And precisely that's the reason why you are seeing the stock inching higher. I also want to pull up Fortis Healthcare. After a while, the stock's been moving. And in fact, not just moving, it touched its 52-week high mark in today's trade. It's up about 4 to 4.5%, and you've got some moves coming on Z, which is now up about 6%. It's at 250 right now, Brijesh. The sort of recovery that we've seen on Z Entertainment in the last 2 sessions, would you take any bet here looking at the charts?
Still trend has been down on a longer term time frame on the chart, but suppose someone wants to play for a swing based trading, I would be suggesting keep a strict stop loss of 243, look for buying at the present rate for the target of 260 to 265. The stock has to be closing out 280, then only from short term to medium term it would be coming out from a bear grip.
Kshitij, United Spirits too is at 52-week high. It's up about 3 to 3.5%. If somebody is holding long positions here, what would your advice be? What are the levels on the upside that you will advise?
See, on a short-term basis, the stock has given a sharp breakout with the heavy volumes, say above 660 odd levels. And if somebody is holding the long positions for say trading perspective as well, one can hold on onto the stock. As currently stock is trading around 673, 674 odd levels. You need to trail your stop loss towards 665 levels from here on. And I believe stock has still much more potential to move towards more highs. So keep a stop loss below 660 from here on and keep your long position intact.
Okay, keep your long positions intact on United Spirits. Jigar, where is the defensive bet coming, in the investments or you guys are making? Because I'm not interested in auto and pharma for the time being. Even in IT, I don't think you guys have exposure to any large cap company.
Yeah, so essentially with IT, I think we might see a very subdued rupee barring a few, unforeseen events at the moment. Because you're looking at arguably a $40 billion surplus on BOP for the next 2 years. So CAD might be a $40 billion deficit, but the amount of FDI and FI inflows we are seeing, I think that might top $80 billion this year and hopefully next year as well. In which case, you're getting the front runners in the IT pack, TCS, Infosys, it's something like 20 plus PE. at a time when the demand environment is rather subdued, where rupee is not really helping margins and costs are still inflating. Right, so why would I want to pay a 20 PE just because there are some ETF flows which are keeping these stocks higher? I might as well, go ahead and buy something like a Cyient or Persistent or eClerx, where they're trading at something like 9.5 times. They're not small companies. They are almost 14,000 plus employees for Cyient. That's the company we hold. Niche R&D for aviation's business. Some slowdown, yes, currently, but it's picking up fairly well. So I think, so defensive bets again, right? The way to think about it, the way we think about it when we build the portfolio is that risks for me are twofold. One is, what is the possibility of me losing capital? Just because the stock is volatile doesn't make it risky for me, right? So if we are holding it from end to end, when I want to sell that business, would I end up losing money or not? And the second most important risk, which I think a lot of people are not accounting for today when they hide into so-called quality, is that of an opportunity risk, right? You've seen number of instances like Coca-Cola in the US. From 1998 to 2016, for 18 years, that stock delivered 0% returns. Hindustan Unilever, which is the defensive story in India, delivered 0% return between 2000 and 2010. So essentially, if you end up paying a lot for the business, no matter how good the quality of the company or the management, it's unlikely that you will make money in the relatively short term, which is 4-5 years, in which case that is a risk to us. So our way to manage the defensive space is slightly different by not overpaying to start with.
The better question would have been then how are you hedging the portfolio, but I'll come back to that. Let me get some closing strategies from our techies then, since it's just 10 minutes to go for markets to shut shop. Brijesh, I'll come to you. Any BTST or any STBT for Monday?
BTST, Navneet, Biocon looks good on the chart. The stock has been trading well above the Bollinger Band, that is 202, and the previous swing high has been broken. So keeping a stop loss of 302, one can go for a long side. Right now it's quoting at 310 and play for the target of 320. Any closing above 317 on a 17, then the stock might retest its 52-week high, that is 327 around. So for a short-term bet, and even for the BTST point of view, it's look promising to play on the long side.
And Biocon is at day's high, gains of 5% seen. Kshitij, what about you? Your closing strategy?
Yeah, fortunately, the Biocon was also on my radar, but nevertheless, the other stock I have picked for today as a BTST, the stock is from the metal counter, and the stock is JSW Steel. Currently, stock is up by nearly 1% and currently trading around 279 odd zone. So I believe, yes, the BTST trade can be taken into JSW Steel, because I believe in a coming week, the metal counter once again should outperform the market. And other stock, again, I would like to take as a BTST is from the metal counter once again. The stock is Hindalco. The stock is currently trading around 197 odd levels, and the kind of a recovery we have seen from the lower levels, we can say it's almost a V-shaped recovery onto the technical charts. And on a higher side, once a move to above 200 levels could trigger once again a short covering into the stock. So Hindalco and JSW would be my pick as a BTST trade.
There's some closing ideas, keep them in mind. Jigar, you want to comment on the metals SPAC? And obviously, the China factor is very dominant in terms of determining our prices as well. But it looks like the cycle is turning for metals as a space. Do you feel that it's time to be in this buzzing space? And it could be a big value and return churner?
Unlikely, Devena, because what's happening is that historically when I used to track metals, we used to say that if you buy in November and sell in February, your annual returns are done, right? So that used to be the heuristic we used to work with. Now at that point in time, this period is very different because the entire northern hemisphere is snowed in, right? So China, parts of Russia are snowed in. So they're not producing as fast as they normally do in the year. And demand for the Western countries are still strong. So that creates a spike in prices, which if you seasonally adjust is not that big a number through the year. now currently we are in the regime where no country is actually going ahead and building their entire ecosystem, right? China did that between 2001 until 2008 when it used to import everything. India is doing it, but it's very small today. I think we are some 130, 140 million tons on a base of 1.3 billion tons of steel production. So it doesn't really matter if you're growing at 5 or 7%. And the third trend is essentially where every country is being, more nationalistic, more inward-looking, which means that every bit of barrier is being pulled up. It started with Europe, then US did it, then India also did it. So now it's very local factors. It's not really the global super cycle. So you have to be extremely fast if you want to pull something in metals. I think a large part of the rally is behind us. But some names are interesting, like JSPL, where they're still in a special situation, sort of a case. The debt is at some 45,000 crores, market cap is much smaller relative to it. But something like a global major, Tata Steel or JSW Steel, I doubt if that can make you a lot of money over longer terms.
Okay, got that. Jigar, we'll let you go on that note. Thank you very much for
Thank you so
joining us
much.
this afternoon. We've got about under 10 minutes left to go for market.